Okay, this is a little bit of additional practice for dealing with GitHub, GitHub Desktop, and GitHub Classroom. Now, if you are already comfortable working with GitHub and desktop and everything else, and you've had no issues with submitting assignments, you really do not need to worry about this. This is just purely additional practice for those that need it. So if that's not you, that's awesome. Just continue on with things. But if you've had any kind of comments back from me about, no, I don't see changes, or if you've gotten zeros on things, things haven't been submitted correctly, etc., this video is to help very clearly spell out exactly how to use GitHub Classroom, Desktop, Visual Studio Code to get things turned in and submitted correctly. So to start off from the very beginning of the process, accepting the assignment. Now, again, you won't see this particular screen, but I just wanted to make sure I was from the start. You've clicked on the link. You will then come to this page right here. Do you want to accept this assignment? Yes, you want to accept this assignment. Now, pretty much everyone has no issues with this up until this point. Now you have accepted this assignment, and it is now called this. And if I come back over to my test account's GitHub and I hit F5, and there we go, I can see it. And if I click on that link, that is going to show all of the associated files that automatically got copied in. Of course, this only exists on the web page right now, so I need to use GitHub Desktop to clone this. So I'm going to come over to GitHub Desktop. I'm going to go to File, and I'm going to go to Clone Repository. From here, I can then choose what it is that I want to clone. And I can see right here, additional GitHub practice. That is the one that I want to clone. Remember, you can filter. Usually it's a pretty good way of filtering is just by typing in one word of the assignment, and it should filter it down so that way your list is less overwhelming. I'm going to select that. And then the path, make sure you pay attention to where your assignments are going, because sometimes you will have to add files in, which means you are going to need to know where this path is. So I'm going to hit clone. And again, you will typically not see this particular screen right here. This is because I bounce back and forth between two different GitHub accounts. Okay, once I see this screen, no local changes, I know I am good to go, and I can start working on things in Visual Studio Code. So I'm going to go to File, Open Folder. I'm going to find the folder that I just cloned out, and I'm going to click on Select Folder, and now I can see all the files to edit. I'm going to start with demo.py. And this should be reflective of the most typical use case scenario. You're going to have a file, it's going to have instructions, and then you're going to follow those instructions. Do make sure that you follow those instructions. If they say do not add lines of code or do not remove lines of code or so on and so forth, or only change variable names, make sure you are following those instructions. In this particular case, the final output, fix the typo. The final output for this file should be I am done. So I am just going to change this to I am done. Always test your code before submission. Always, always, always test your code before submission. One, it's a good way of making sure that you've actually saved the file, because running the file will automatically save it. It has to in order to be able to run it. And it gives you a final verification of yes, everything is actually working, it is good to submit. Always test before submission. All right, my file's been changed. Typical use case scenario. I will now go back to GitHub Desktop. Now GitHub Desktop is going to show that this file has changes. You should then have the commit to main button be active. It should default to putting in a thing here like update demo.py or whatever it happens to be. You can put additional information here. You can put a description in. It is optional. I'm going to click on commit to main. It is very important to realize that at this point, the changes are not on the remote machine. If I come back to my repository and I take a look at demo.py, it still says this is not the answer. I have not pushed the changes yet, so they are not visible on the remote repository. I'm going to come back here to GitHub, and I'm going to click on Push Origin. And now that change has been pushed. That's going to be your typical use case scenario. Let's take a look at another scenario. What if you have messed around with a file to the point where you just want to reset, you want to restart? Maybe, wrong spot. Now, file's completely messed up. All right, I need to reset. I need to start over again. You've saved, you've ran it, you've done testing. There's no just control Zing this out. What we can do, one, make sure you do close the file in Visual Studio Code. It is not strictly speaking a requirement, but it will help prevent confusion. So I'm going to close this file out of Visual Studio Code. Or even for that matter, just fully close Visual Studio Code. That you don't have to do that, but definitely close the file in Visual Studio Code. You don't want that file open. Now I can come over here to GitHub Desktop, and again, it's going to be showing me that I have changes. But what I can do now is I can right-click on this file, and I can say discard changes. And you will get this message right here. Are you sure you want to discard all changes? I'm going to say yes, I want to discard. Now what that will do is it will automatically restore that file to the previous version. If I come back over here to Visual Studio Code and I reopen Restore Practice, the file has been restored. There are no changes. So as long as you have not pushed, you can always discard changes and have it restored. And if you have pushed, you can still restore the changes, but unless you are willing to experiment a little bit, that will probably require my assistance to help you restore something if you've actually pushed changes. But you can always get back to the original version of a file. Now, let's say that something has happened. There was an error in the files, or I need to issue a correction, so to speak, and you need to copy and paste some information over. So like this file here is an example of that. Well, normally, of course, the information would be provided on Blackboard, but just to make sure that all the information is contained within this little practice session, I'm just going to copy this chunk of code right here. So the import built-ins, import says yada, yada, yada. When you are directed to copy paste code, it is important to make sure that you copy and paste everything, right? don't forget a line, because forgetting a line could cause it to not work. And you will know that you have done your copy and paste correctly, because when you run this, it will display Hello World. Okay, so now I've made changes to this file. Now remember, these changes have not been pushed out yet. If I go back to GitHub Desktop, it shows that yes, changes have been made to this file. I commit those changes. Those changes are now committed. But if I go back to here, nope, if I look at demo's changes have been uploaded because we pushed those changes. But if we come back here, and of course restore, we didn't push any changes to restore, so restore is still correct. But if I go to copy paste, again, there's no information here. Every time that you make a change, that's going to have to be committed and pushed. Now, for the assignments, because they're going to generally follow the pattern of a guided practice, an assignment, and maybe some bug fixing. So 2 to 3 files. You can choose to do everything at once, do one commit and one push, or you can do the files one at a time and commit and push for each file. But remember, until you push, those changes do not get pushed up to the repository. So I'm going to have to yet again click on push origin. Now those changes have been pushed. And now those changes are visible on the repository. One final thing. Sometimes you'll have to add files. Say when you are required to do a draw IO flowchart diagram. Again, the easiest way to do this is that when you create your diagram, save this to the folder that you cloned the assignment to. So I've got the default flowchart thing here. So I'm going to go to File, I'm going to go to Save As, and I need to give it a location. Again, this is where knowing that directory, where knowing your path is important. Paths are important. As a programmer, you must pay attention to them. Get used to thinking of things in terms of where is this file located, what is its path. And here it is, additional GitHub practice. Open that up. And my save screen just closed on me. Okay, try that again. Oh, okay, it's saved. I have no idea why my keyboard decided to spaz out there. But okay, file is saved. By the way, you can rename things from within this dialog. Just hit F2. There we go. Now, with that file saved, if I come back over to GitHub Desktop, it's going to show that there is a new file. Again, I have to commit and push. It doesn't matter that I've already committed and pushed twice. This is a new change. You have to commit and push again. If I go to Microsoft Edge here, and I look at the files, it's not here. If I hit refresh, it's not here. I have to come back over here. I have to commit. It's now been committed on the local. I now have to push. It has now been pushed up to remote. Now I can see it. If I hit refresh, there it is. make sure you understand how to do all these steps. This is not a graded assignment, but I would strongly advise you, if you have been having problems, go through, make sure you understand all of these steps, make sure that you can do these, and then go back and do any corrections that might be necessary for your assignments.